Good evening, everyone. I hope you are keeping well. You're very welcome to episode 17 of In Conversation With. My name is Sinead McCrohan. I work in the Student Recruitment Office in DCU, and I am delighted to be back to host another episode. So, for anyone who is new, of course, you're very welcome. We run this webinar every Wednesday evening from 4 o'clock till 5 o'clock, and we cover two different undergrad courses in DCU, just as a way for you to kind of get some real insight into kind of the student experience and what it's like to actually study these courses in DCU. So sometimes we talk to current students. This week it's graduates in particular, and then other weeks it might be staff from the faculty or even lecturers. So just before we get started, I'll draw your attention to the Q&A function that's there on the bottom of the screen. So when we welcome the guests on, as we're having our conversation, if there's anything that you want to know about in particular, whether that is, contact hours of the course, so what sort of career prospects you can get, how they enjoyed their own DCU experience, you can guide the conversation by asking us through the Q&A function, and we'll make sure to get an answer over to you. So in a moment's time, I'm going to welcome Ross McGarry into the call, who is a graduate of Chemical and Pharmaceutical Sciences in DCU. And at 4:30, we're going to welcome Sam McKeague on, who studied physics with astronomy. So without further ado, I am going to promote Ross to a panelist, and hopefully this works okay for us. Almost see Ross.
Hello.
Hi, Ross. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk to us today. Have you had a busy day so far?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we have a couple of people online already, which is great, and the numbers will probably go up as the conversation goes on and people start logging in. But as I said, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. We wish we could be out there in person, talking to students and giving them advice, and I'm sure you'd be doing loads of that yourself as well. But just with the current pandemic, this is probably the best way that we can get that information out there. So, Ross, you have graduated from Chemical and Pharmaceutical Sciences in DCU. If I was a student on the call today and I'd never heard of that before, how would you kind of describe that course, within a paragraph?
So Chemical and Pharmaceutical Sciences is one of DCU's chemistry courses, one of the two. It's the one that focuses essentially on pretty much chemistry, where the other course has a bit of biology in it. So it's mostly chemistry. There's a good mix of synthetic chemistry, so designing and building chemicals, and the analysis, so certain techniques, infrared spectrometry, and such. So there's a wide range of stuff.
Yeah, so kind of the more, as I said, there's a couple of different chemistry options in DCU. This is probably the most chemistry heavy out there, if that helps anyone who's maybe considering. So how did you end up picking the course yourself? If you go back to your sixth year self, was DCU on the radar? Was chemistry in particular on the radar, or was it a bit of a shot in the dark?
For me, it was a bit of both, as you say. So I always knew I wanted to go to DCU. I knew the Internship was really good. It's a great experience. That's what we'll talk about in a few minutes. So that for me was DCU, Intra, that's what I wanted to do. And then chemistry, it kind of just happened. I just fell in love at leaving cert, and I was like, this is what I want to do.
Fantastic. So you kind of had a bit of an idea going in. So for anyone listening who maybe is fifth or sixth year or even TY, as an entry requirement, you don't necessarily have to have chemistry to do this course, as long as you have one science subject for your leave and cert, and and you pass that and get in, then you can kind of go from there. So if we go along that line of thinking, Ross, so when you go into first year in chemistry and pharmaceutical sciences, what does first year look like?
So I just want to add there, I only did the one science subject. I only ever did chemistry. So if anyone's out there is panicked, I did it. I got out fine, so it's not too difficult.
Sure.
First year is a general introduction to biology, physics, and chemistry. It's a bit more advanced than leaving cert level, but it's similar enough that you won't be too daunted. So you do physics 1, physics 2, chemistry 1, and so on. And you do labs in all of those subjects, and that's basically first year, but it's an introduction. It gives you fundamentals in each of the topics: physics, chemistry, biology. And
Okay, and then so that's kind of first year. So basically, everyone's getting on the same level playing field because, as we said, there's no specific chemistry requirement or physics or biology. So when you enter first year, is essentially getting everyone on the same boat. And I'm sure, Ross, like, and maybe you use the kind of services yourself. There's a lot of support there for students in terms of like tutorials. Could you go into some detail maybe about like any of the tutorials that you had just to kind of get that individual attention?
Of course. So some tutorials are module specific. So for example, maths, we had a scheduled one every week, and that was set by the lecturer. And each week, a maths postgraduate person would come into us and teach us the maths that we we're doing and explain through it. And on that subject, there's also the Maths Learning Centre in DCU. These are a great resource. They're in the library. I think they're online at the moment, actually, but they're usually in the library, and you can go in every week and you can present your questions, and maths graduates will talk you through and explain all the maths to you. And then for the other subjects, physics, we had set tutorials again that was taught by a physics graduate in DC who's working. He'd come in again every week and help us explain through the topic, answer any questions or any problems we had. And then for biology and chemistry, we could talk to the lecturer. So if we wanted a tutorial, we'd talk to them and ask them, look, we're not really understanding this subject. Could you go over it again, or could you give us more problems and such? That was really the tutorials in us. And there's loads of resources around as well.
Yeah, great to know that, and probably a sense of comfort again for a student who's listening that maybe doesn't study all of the science subjects for the Leaving Cert and is apprehensive about going into a science degree. The supports are there absolutely in DCU, as you said, whether it's a one-to-one kind of tutorial in a classroom or you want to speak to a lecturer afterwards, very, very accommodating. Okay, so that's year one done, and you kind of have a grasp of all of these different science subjects. So what's year two looking like then?
So year two for me, it's a bit more specialised. You start breaking up. So in first year, it's kind of a common entry to everyone. You're mixed with all the courses. In second year, it's the first time you're really with your course, your core 30 odd people, and you start doing the more focused chemistry. So you start doing more organic chemistry, physical chemistry, and so on. For us in particular, it meant we were doing 12-hour labs each week as well. That's what, indeed, to the course, we have a huge, heavy contact with lab time. There's a lot of focus on it. So we did a lot of lab work on top of 4 modules a semester, really. And that involves chemistry, fundamentals and theoretical side of it, and a bit of maths as well. We did maths in second year as well.
Okay, very good. So again, you're kind of building on what you've learned from year one to kind of give you that then tailored knowledge in year two. So year three then, and this is a common thread in many of the DCU courses, is that you get an intra or an internship. And intra is just the office that basically runs the internships. It stands for integrated training, because I know some students kind of look at us sideways when we say intra and they're like, what the hell is that? So it's basically a work placement system. And as I said, it's offered on most of the DCU courses, and this is included for chemistry and pharmaceutical sciences. So how did you go about your internship process? Do you want to talk us through that and how that all works?
Yep, of course. For me, that was the most exciting bit. That was the bit I really wanted to get out of the course. So it's very straightforward in DCU. So there's a whole system set up. You log your name in, and it has all the job requirements listed. So you can just apply at random, essentially. So you can go, they'll have a brief description, where they're based, and what's kind of expected out of you, and you can hit just apply. And from that, you then get an interview, and you can interview. So I interviewed for 2 places and got my second one. I was out in Teagasc Ashtown. It's near Blanchardstown in Dublin. It's food testing, but it's very straightforward. It's very little hassle on part of the students. We don't really have to do anything as such. We just have to apply for the job. So how intro for me, it was a 6-month placement. I was doing food testing, so I won't go into too much specifics because it kind of involves chemistry you may not have encountered yet, so I don't want to get too confusing. But it was a great experience. I think it's the biggest part you'll learn. You learn so much of the practical side of chemistry that not really can get covered in labs or modules. It was really the best experience, and you meet loads of people. For example, I did my replacement with 2 people from Limerick IT, and I was very friends with them. Still kind of am. I talk to them every so often. It was a great experience, a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think you pointed out something great there as well, is that there were certain things on your internship that you actually had to learn there because you couldn't learn it in a lab or sitting in a lecture. Do you have some examples of say like responsibilities in your internship that like were really cool? Because again, some people consider an internship as like you're going to be making coffee and, you know, printing stuff. And maybe you might have to print a couple of things while you're there. But really, the DCU internships are hands-on and you do have responsibilities. Was that the same for you?
Yes, it absolutely was. So it's a testing lab, so we each get so much work done per week is expected of us. So some of the more interesting bits for me, sorry, let me think about this again.
Yeah.
Some of the more interesting bits on the placement was that I got onto some of the proper testing machines, and I was allowed to use them free at will. They're like €350,000 machines. They're really expensive.
Wow. No
And
pressure.
no, yeah, exactly. And they're just like, knock yourself out, go for it. So I got great experience there. Experience you don't even really get in DCU because there's not that many of them. They're really expensive and such, so don't let them damage you. But it was a good experience that way. Other things, I was allowed to write the reports that were sent to actual customers.
Wow.
Written them up. So a lot of responsibility for someone who's only, you know, didn't have a degree at the time, even if you think about it. You know, it was a 6-month placement and I got a great experience.
Exactly. And as you said, opportunities that you probably wouldn't have had, you know, if you weren't there through DCU, because how many other students like have done that before? Not many. And just for anyone who's joined the chat, again, you can use the Q&A function if you want to ask Ross anything specific about chemical and pharmaceutical sciences. So you were in Chagas for yours and it was food testing. Can you remember what sort of other companies people went to, just out of curiosity, if maybe food testing didn't, you know, someone didn't want to do that? What were the other opportunities there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of mix, and I heard through my friends. For example, someone did reporting in, I can't remember the company name, but it was basically a business-y type of work.
Okay.
So they were kind of in charge of writing reports and filing and account management and stuff. So it wasn't really science, but it was science related, and that the business did
kind of side of things. Yeah.
Other things was quality control type work. So there's two ends of this. You could either be on the reporting end, in which case you oversaw the reports and typed up and said that, yeah, this chemical we produce is legally okay or not good enough, remake it. Or the other side of that was people who are actually physically in the lab doing those tests that said that characterize all the problems.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, so that's cool. And something I probably didn't even really think of is like, yeah, any chemical that you use has to be approved, whether that is in, you know, a top level, say like chemotherapy drug or a vaccine, all the way down to the food and the drinks that we consume every day. Like everything needs to be approved and fully healthy. So I'd say definitely a lot of career opportunities there. So you did your 6 months in Chagas and then you went back then for final year. So what was final year like after having that kind of industry experience? Did you find it helped with your studies, or how did that work?
I found intro did help with fourth year. It gave you great appreciation of what you learned, because you kind of everything suddenly clicked, if that makes sense. It was all in perspective. And the other thing was having work in industry, you met people who have also gone through the system. They had degrees or such. So you could talk to them about what they did, and it helped guide my future, basically. I could talk to them, how did they got through, what was their goals, what did they do to get through. So that was great. It gave me good focus coming back, and then like, okay, this is how I kind of want to lay my future out.
Yeah.
And I went from there.
Yeah, Intra is a fantastic opportunity to not only kind of understand what you want to do, but also what you don't want to do. That's sometimes a kind of a forgotten part of it. Like you might not absolutely love your Intra for 6 months. Maybe it's just not an area that is really for you, but it's amazing to figure that out in 6 months, as opposed to signing, say, a 2-year contract with another company. And then you're going, oh no, I actually don't really like this that much. So it's fantastic. So when you're in final year, Ross, is there a chance to specialize in an area? Do you get to pick kind of certain modules you want to study, or would it be based more on maybe like a research topic or a project?
So the only choice you really have in fourth year is you can choose between one or two modules, advanced medicinal or super molecular. So that's the only choice you have. So the real difference about specializing comes down to your fourth year project. That's a 12-week long project you do the second half of fourth year, and you pick a topic. There's a list sent around, so you don't have to come up with it, but there's a list you go through and you can pick. And in certain areas, so synthetic chemistry or analytical side of work, or some computational and kind of things.
And did you find that the topic you chose for your final year, did that relate anything to your internship, or did you kind of pick a new strand to look at?
I was a bit different in that I actually did my fourth year project with my intro placement.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, they were a research lab, so I said I'd go back and do it with them. So I did. So yes.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, you kind of had that set up already. That's fantastic. So, very busy 4 years by the sounds of it. You mentioned that, there's a lot of lab time. How many hours approximately were you spending kind of in college a week in terms of contact hours? So sitting in lectures, in labs, practicals.
Yeah, so it varies year by year, but I think averages out about 30 contact hours a week.
Okay.
A lot of
So,
that being
yeah.
lab work.
Quite a commitment. It's definitely the busier side of the scale in comparison to some other courses. But of course, it's such a jam-packed full qualification, as you mentioned. So you kind of have to put that much time into it. So then you graduated. Congratulations
I
on
did.
that. So what happens then? Did you go back to Chagas, or did you kind of go searching elsewhere?
So for me, I only just graduated in November, so I stayed in DCU and I did a postgraduate qualification. So I'm pursuing a PhD in chemistry.
Very good. And would you know, is that a very common route for people to go down after this degree? Is it kind of split between people go into research or maybe work, or would you have any idea of that breakdown?
I would not off by hand, but I don't think it's uncommon. It does happen, and there's a few people who still do it, and there's a load of when you're in DC, you see there's loads of postgraduates floating around,
Yeah.
and so it's common, I think.
Yeah. And again, for any maybe fifth or sixth years, or maybe even TYs who are watching and are like, what's a postgrad? Essentially, you've your level 8, which is an undergraduate degree, which is in a university, and then people might go on to do a level 9 kind of postgraduate study, or yourself kind of go and do a PhD just to further your study. That tends to happen with science subjects, isn't it? You kind of go into research or you go into industry, and obviously people can flow between the two over the years. It's just kind of that's an easy way to break down the options. So again, if you've any questions for Ross, let us know in the Q&A. We'd be more than happy to cover it. So that's a lot about the course in particular. Were you very involved in DCU outside of lecture hours? Any clubs and societies that you want to give a shout out to?
Yes, so there's two things I'd like to call out. So I was in the Space and Robotics Society in DCU. So that was really fun. That I joined that in first year. So it's all about two big events we did was we looked at telescopes. So we looked at Venus passing the sun. They set up a telescope outside the library in DCU and you could go up and look. So that was a really fun experience. It was a bit of fun. You could talk to people and so on. And the other thing we did with them was kind of a robots war type thing, where we built little robots and fought against each other. And that was really fun. So that was over a few weeks. We all got partnered up with somebody in the group. We built the robot and then fought against each other on one night over pizza, I think. So it was
Yeah.
a lot of fun. I met
No,
loads.
that's such a great thing to get involved with. And as you said there, sorry, my Wi-Fi lagged a bit. I think you were about to say, like, you kind of get to meet people who have similar interests.
Yes, that was
That's
basically, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And were you involved with these societies from first year, or are they something that you found maybe a little bit later on in year 2, 3, or 4?
I found the space and robotics one from first year. That was
Mhm. Yeah, and it's a great way because, like, say your course in particular, like there mightn't be much relating to space or robotics in particular,
no.
but DCU has a fantastic culture of kind of amalgamating interests. So you could be studying journalism and still be involved in the space and robotics society, or equally, you could be studying engineering and be in the dance society. You can really kind of explore your interests that you had, whether it's in secondary school or that you've just picked up in university. And it doesn't necessarily have to be relating to your course, which is the beauty of it. But it sounds like yours kind of did. In some ways, I'm sure they did help with your course, which is quite cool.
I was the only chemist in the group, so I was a bit
Right.
of a sheep. So it was a
Yeah.
bit different. So you can do anything. There's tons of stuff. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
they always say if you can't find a club, you can start one yourself. That's the kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, there's over 140 clubs and societies in DCU, and if you got there and realized that you wanted to set up a society, I think the Burrito Society is the newest one now, and it only takes 20 signatures, 20 student signatures to set up your own society. So long live the Burrito Society, or any new one that's set up and that you have an interest in. So as I said, there's a Q&A box there if you do have any questions. And just as we kind of come to the end, as there don't seem to be many questions coming in, would you have any piece of advice for a student who's listening, whether they're listening live now or going to watch back when this is uploaded? What piece of advice may have helped you when you were in sixth year in terms of whether it's choosing a college, a course, applications, even when you're in college, one nugget of advice?
So one that particularly helped me that I got off a previous year from one of these events was when choosing it in DCU, the common entry. Everyone essentially does common entry, so it's much easier to pick a specialized course first. So for example, I did chemical and pharmaceuticals from first year, where some of my friends did common entry into science from first year. But what happens then is you go into second year is you then specialize, you put into my course or someone else's. So it's a bit of a stress easer if you get it the first time, essentially. So I'd recommend to apply for one of the specialized courses, chemical and pharmaceuticals, analytical science, or biotechnology, or whatever. So that way you have your place secured as you go into second year. That would be my
Sure.
tip, other than the usual, like work hard and have fun.
Yeah, exactly. And we hear a lot of that, but that's good to know. So yeah, we've kind of changed up the common entry into science, and now it's kind of split up into the school basically. So you can choose to do chemical sciences general entry, and that might suit someone better who maybe isn't sure what strand they want to go into. But as you said, pretty much everyone does common entry anyway in terms of what you learn, because everyone has to get on the same level, and then you can pick an area. But if you listened to kind of Ross's talk today about chemical and pharmaceutical sciences and you know that it's for you, then absolutely put it down on your CAO as kind of an individual entry route if you think that that's for you. So I think we've covered, I think, most things. Oh, one question that I often ask as well is in terms of assessment. Is it a lot of exams? Is it a lot of essays or kind of written projects? How does that work within this course?
Yeah, so for us, it was a lot of exams mostly. We didn't really do much of literary essay type work, bar fourth year, which
Yeah.
was your fourth year project is all written based and a presentation.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's mostly exams.
Okay, cool. Just good to know again if the student is wondering. Just before we let you go, Ross, and again, thank you so much for your time. There's no questions seem to be coming in. So 1 minute warning for anyone who does want to ask a question. Do you have a highlight of your time in DCU, whether it's relating to your course or clubs or societies? One thing that you'll always remember from your time in college.
For me, I did in second year, I was allowed to do the European Analytical Competition for DCU. So that was really fun. I went with three of the people to Letterkenny and Donegal. We took part in the competition. We had loads of fun. We hung out for a day. Bus ride up to Donegal. It was a lot of fun. We had drinks, we had food. And that'll stick with me. It was a lot of fun. It was something I never thought I'd do, but it just happened by happen chance. I was picked. I was sure. It was
what did that involve, Ross, for the day, if you don't mind me asking? What did you get up to? It sounds really cool.
Yeah, so we it was a trip to Donegal. We represented DCU. DCU got second that year as well. Not my picture team, the other one, but I won't say that. Yeah, so we went up and we did titrations. So anyone doing chemistry now, you probably recognize that. And they're still important. So we did a titration in DC, Letterkenny, and we compete against other colleges, Trinity, DIT, you name it, and to be the best at analysing compounds.
That's very cool. It's great to know that, like, I'd never even heard of that competition, but it's something that could present itself to you as a chemical and pharmaceutical sciences student. And I'm sure among a lot of other random competitions or get-togethers or networking events, it's a huge part of college life as well, is enjoying those experiences. And I think every person I've asked what's their favorite memory, it's always to do with a club and society or like an additional thing they got to do. So just remember that is, a huge part of college life as well. So there's no more questions coming in. I think that was a fantastic overview, Ross, of the course and the different routes you can go, the possibilities, and a kind of breakdown of the years as well. So I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much again for your time. This will be recorded, and if you're watching this back and you do have any questions you want to ask, studenthelp@dcu.ie is the email address, and it's the email that you'd get this link to the Zoom from today. So if you do have any questions in hindsight, or you want to clarify something as the weeks go on, do let us know, and I might even send Ross an email then if there are any additional follow-up questions. So at 4:30, in just a couple of minutes time, we're going to welcome Sam McKeague onto the call, who is studied physics with astronomy in DCU. So I will let you go. Let me see if I can remove you as panelist. Ross, thank you so much, and best of luck with everything. So I'm going to change your role to an attendee. Thank you, Ross. And I am just going to turn my camera off, mute myself, and get a cup of tea for a minute. And I will see you guys back here at 4:30 for Sam's session. So thank you very much for that.